But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
That's a lot of this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, hello, and welcome to HBR Talk 256. Which U.S. citizen demographic does the FBI hate the most? I'll bet we can figure it out by the end of the show. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks, and tonight we're watching a little red dot dance across the manosphere over a little of our terminology before landing squarely on the foreheads of some of the most vulnerable young men in the country, and we're going to discuss its implications. But first we gotta do what we gotta do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice. Or perhaps building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. Sorry I sound bad, guys. I'm probably going to cough at you tonight. It's April, and you know what that means. Like, Hannah can't breathe for a couple of weeks. While I get used to the fact that the trees are horny and the grass is horny and the flowers are horny and like now I'm dying.
And so are we.
I'm getting nose raped. I want to file a complaint. This sucks.
I'm sure I won't get through this whole thing without sneezing at least a couple of times. So you know, you're not alone, Hannah.
Oh my gosh, this is like. I do this every year, and then every year at work, they're like, "Are you sick? Should you be here?" And I'm so tempted to be like, "Oh, I think I have the flu.
Yeah.
I need days off." But it would be a lie.
Right.
You can't do that.
Right. I know. I know. And it sucks, like, because other people would do that.
I know.
It's just not in my. It's not who I am, you know.
Right.
So we had a situation at work where we got overpaid for something by the manufacturer, and everybody else wanted to just look the other way.
Oh God.
Yeah.
What happens? What do they think is going to happen when the manufacturer does their internal audit and they figure that out?
Right. And so I said, okay. And nobody was talking to me about it. I know that they know that it was there, right? Nobody said a word to me. I said, all right, I'll fix y'all asses. I went and sent an email and said, hey, would you mind fixing this?
Yeah.
And so they did. And then it was like, hey, you know, next time, and he sent it through an email, so it's
it's official.
Yeah, it's documented. I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. Next time, sure, but this time I got you, bitch, and I got your number. You know, I really, it just shows to me it's like a lack of morals. You know, because if one of our employees was in the same situation, right, where we had overpaid them.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They would waste zero time saying, oh no, pay up. We want that back, sir. And they will get it too.
Yeah, so, they claw that back right away. And every organization does that. And organizations are very much immoral a lot of times about that. They won't tolerate it from you, but they expect you to tolerate it from them.
Right.
Right. Well, that's very, very similar to the U.S. government, right? And we're seeing that, and like I was kind of saying before the show, this has been a long time coming. I've been watching this and expecting this for 10 years, and there were people that called me paranoid for it, but you know, when I first started on Reddit, there was a dumbass feminist group called Shit Reddit Says. And Shit Reddit Says they just tracked comments that they felt were misogynistic, that they felt were racist, sexist, you know, homophobic, didn't fit in with what we would call woke ideology now, political correctness at the time. And they would just make posts. Their post would be a link to a particular comment, and it would say, you know, how many upvotes that comment got at the time, and then, you know, they would discuss it underneath, and they would all flood and change the vote total on that comment. They would all, like, until Reddit changed some rules, and then they had to change how they did that, because they couldn't go to another subreddit from a link in their subreddit and vote on that comment without getting shadow banned. But that subreddit created a gosh, I can't think of the name of the, like, you have BB code for bulletin boards, you have CSS for Reddit, I think it is. But they created a CSS code that would put a flag behind people's names based on what subreddit SRS deemed that they had were primary users of. So they flagged themselves with it to identify themselves or each other in other subreddits. But they also had a list of prominent MRAs that they flagged. And at the time that I got on this list, I didn't realize I was a prominent MRA. I mean, I was very prolific in my discussion there, right? Like, I did a lot of discussion there. And they thought I was a guy. Because when I was on Reddit, I didn't come in with, bells and whistles and ribbons and bows going, hey, everybody, I'm a girl! I just talked to people about things.
Right.
So every time they talked about me early on in that subreddit, they used he, him pronouns for me. And I didn't correct them. I don't care what these people think, Like, so? Does it make a difference if I said this as a man or a woman? It's the thing I said was right, and they couldn't discredit it. They just highlighted it and called it misogynistic. And I'm like, whatever, fuck you guys, I don't care, right? Well, then I realized they had created a list. And, to me now, the way I grew up, my family was really interested in terms of like how history, played out, and in particular how the history of American involvement in wars around the world has played out. And like that meant that I saw a lot of documentaries on like the pre-war environment in Nazi Germany and the pre-war environment in Soviet Russia and so on. And it was kind of an interesting thing, this kind of list making and the flagging of people based on who they are and what they think. That's consistent in that kind of historical othering of a group of people before they're targeted for elimination. And so you have this tendency among people that are trying to take over a culture and trying to dominate that culture and control it to flag dissenters in this manner. So I thought, well, that's creepy, and we talked about that in the subreddit too, about that being creepy and everything. But we laughed about, like, these people put us on a list. We're supposed to be so intimidated, right? Because they're just a bunch of dumbasses on the internet. Who cares? Right? Well, then they started, all the other stuff that they were doing that we've talked about before, campaigning to get us kicked off of Reddit and so on. But there's been, over the last 10 years, maybe the last 13 years, because I was on Reddit in 2010. There's been this slow march of, first they do that, and we had a blogger target us with hit pieces, regular hit pieces. And, people would reference those on their blogs, and we had a nice little blog network, and then we had, like, the alternative media sources, the lower tier alternative media sources for the left wing would reference the blogger. At the time, his blog was called Man Boobs. And which, how do you take that seriously? So he changed it to We Hunted the Mammoth, which is really funny because the story behind that is the idea that men do things to make society comfortable for women, and women should appreciate it, being illegitimate because nobody asked them, which is false. Somebody did ask them. People asked them over and over again. Demands have been placed on them throughout history for that, right? But this guy, David Futrell, named his blog We Hunted the Mammoth, And he is a feminist blogger who speaks on behalf of women. And he is one of the biggest critics of MRA women out there. And it was the original source cited for most news about us. They would go back to his blog. Anything that you read about us, even in mainstream media, you would could trace it through like alternative left-wing media, and going back farther and farther, you would eventually find a link to David Futrell's blog, We Hunted the Mammoth, which we never asked him to cover us, right? We never asked for his opinion on our work or our thoughts. So I think it's kind of ironic that he calls himself We Hunted the Mammoth, based on that, like, well, women never asked men to be. Yes, you did. So shut the fuck up, don't tell me that, right? But, so we had this long, slow process of news articles being written about us, and in the meantime, as that's going on, you also had these lists and these news articles referenced in feminist academia, right? They made essays, reports for class, gender studies and stuff, and they would write about us. Pretty soon, we would have, we'd see like research papers where they were referencing essays and news articles and lists and stuff, and we ended up on academic lists of I guess ne'er-do-wells, dangerous people, scary people, misogynistic people, right?
The Untermensch.
Yeah. So we really, the whole time, we've kind of like treated this in a fairly lighthearted way, because it's laughable until it's not, right? And those academic lists and the news articles are what the SPLC cited when they accused us of being misogynistic extremists, male supremacists, I think they call us.
Because some guy with a blog named Man Boobs, ironically, probably has bigger tits than mine.
Right.
He's the source of your information. Okay, got it.
Right.
Like, did you ever reach out and try to touch someone?
No, they never talked to a single person in the men's rights movement, and they won't. They did what they needed to do. And I said, when the SPLC labeled, they tried to get this done, by the way. Oh gosh, I want to say 2014. Somebody in the SPLC wrote an article. They didn't label us a hate movement. They didn't label us any kind of anything, really. They just talked about misogyny in the manosphere, right? But feminists came out and said, that
that's a watch list. They put us on their watch list.
Well, they didn't put us on a list at that time. We weren't on the list yet. That was just an article.
Not officially, right. Not officially, but the signals go out to the
we didn't get on that list until much later. But feminists tried to talk about it like we were on a watch list. So, right, so that's where the process was before COVID, right? That we hit the point where the men's rights movement as a whole, a voice for men specifically, Karen specifically, on a watch list, on a non-government organization watch list, that we kept talking about. This is a little more serious because the government does reference this organization. The government does take this organization seriously, but it's not that you don't take it seriously. It's not proof of anything yet. But now, the FBI has actually got a document that's an FBI document, not an SPLC document. Now, this document doesn't specify men's rights activists as extremists yet. So that's one part of the background. Other part of the background of this article before I go into what it says, and this is a full disclosure thing. This article is published on the Heritage Foundation's newsletter, The Daily Signal. The reason is because the Heritage Foundation is the organization that did the FOIA that got this document. And I traced back to them and their blog or their news site specifically because the other articles I read about this said things like, the FBI flags were right-wingers as extremists, but the language that they were showing being flagged wasn't necessarily right-wing language. It traces more back to the incel community. So I wanted to go back to the source. So what we're going to be reading here is from a right-wing think tank, a conservative think tank. But this isn't just a right-wing issue. And you'll see what I mean when I read through this. But I just wanted to give the background of all of that. So that's where we are. It's been about 10 to 13 years in the making. Feminists have finally gotten a United States government organization to flag part of the manosphere as extremists, violent extremists. And it's being looked into, but it's still disturbing. Yeah. So the article is titled, "Here's FBI Glossary for Flagging Violent Extremism." And you can see here in the picture, you got the AG and the director, and they're talking about this at a press conference. So this was released in a press conference. So that's probably why the Heritage Foundation was aware enough of it to ask for the document itself. The FBI uses a glossary of terms to look for online. So in other words, they're looking for these words on social media and in blog posts and stuff like that. This is them searching people out.
Yeah.
Right? That could indicate someone is involved with violent extremism, according to documents obtained by the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project.
Did they include kill all men?
No.
In that? I'm just asking. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, conspicuously absent is the violent rhetoric of feminism.
Right.
But flagged terms include red-pilled, first popularized by the 1999 film The Matrix, based, looks-maxing, and the names Chad and Stacy. I feel sorry for anybody out there right now whose names are actually Chad or Stacy.
I know a Chad. I know a Chad.
Yeah, we had several Chads in my class, and also some guys that were named Chad. But
I've never met a Stacy.
Like
I gotta say,
I had 3 Stacys in my class.
Oh man,
3 girls named Stacy in my class. There were my class was we had 2 guys named Michael who had the same last name, and their middle initials rhymed.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we had, one was a middle initial P and the other one was a middle initial T. So we gave one of them a nickname and the other one called him by his last name.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, and then My maiden name, there's another last name, another surname that is the same as my maiden name, but it has an S at the end. And I had a class name with that other surname. And we looked nothing alike. Like, he was blonde, and different shaped face and everything. Like, it was obvious we were not related, but people would ask if we were related. So we started telling people that we were twins. We just had different parents. Yeah, we're twins, but we have different parents.
All right. Which one was Arnold?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so the first term they cited is one of the basic terms in the men's rights movement. You're red-pilled if you start to understand what's going on in the world in terms of how male disposability and gynocentrism have affected law, policy, social attitudes, and so on, and recognizing that you actually have to be prepared to act defensively, with things like always be recording, don't automatically trust people, don't trust the government, don't trust the police, those kind of things. Us knowing that, us knowing that is now makes us flagged as extremists, right? We're flagged as people with bad attitudes because we are aware that the police might lie to us. And in particular, we are aware that if you're a man, the police might discriminate against you and they will use your gender against you to portray you as a violent thug.
Right. It's having the temerity to actually stand up for yourself. That this is what they're deeming as extreme action. Like, this is it's feels like it's like a straight out of 1984. You know what I mean? You are not allowed to question anything in society. What you think might be wrong. Oh, if you think wrong, oh my God, nope. You're a bad thinker, and we got to figure out a way to fix your brain. But first, we got to let everyone around know that you're the bad guy, and we've got to go exterminate you and your way of thinking.
Yeah.
When all you're sitting there doing is trying to maybe learn about something or defend yourself or learn about what your rights actually are. These people, man, Jesus.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's just great. They also flagged phrases that include "it's over" and "just be first," which it goes on. It'll explain in this document when we look at it what those are. These documents were obtained by the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project. The Daily Signal is Heritage's multimedia news organization. Such words and phrases have come to be code for certain extremists who communicate online with others like them, according to the FBI's glossary of words, indicating racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism, and a list of key terms about involuntary celibate violent extremism. So I'm gonna make this big because it's hard to see overview thing, and I'm not gonna go through everything here, but let's see, we refine these.
It's blowing my mind that they spent time on this. Meanwhile, the actual violence that was being done in the street in the names of BLM was completely, oh no, this is peaceful protest, guys. No, that's a warm, lovely fire. They're just, getting some heat for the homeless people out here. It's peaceful, man.
Yeah.
Jesus, just the biggest middle finger to the FBI.
Yep.
It's a joke. Sorry, guys. I'm not really talking about. Fuck these people.
Well, I'll be honest. Like, and I said this in our low bar as well. But I mean, the FBI has gotten kind of a reputation, right? Especially in the last few months with all the information coming out about them. The last couple of years, really, with all the information coming out about them getting people involved with groups, and then those groups, which had never done anything violent before, suddenly coming up with really stupid plans to kidnap a governor or do other stupid, violent things, and then it turns out that, gosh, the FBI agents were involved in the planning stages of that. Maybe the group wouldn't have done it if they hadn't been involved. And that actually is one of those things that there's a huge difference between an organic crime and entrapment. And I've seen this kind of entrapment tactic used in other ways, and it's just a totally different thing. You're not getting somebody off the streets who is dangerous. You're creating a situation where a person looks dangerous and you have an excuse to incarcerate them, and that's not serving the community. That's preying on the weaker elements within the community. The FBI shouldn't be doing that. No. Our organization should be doing that. And part of it is, they can't just surveil you because, you have rights, right? But if they get involved with you, they're not surveilling. They're in the group. You let them in. And so there you go. But you can see in their terminology definitions here, like they have the red pill and the black pill. Red pill refers to a belief shared by many online communities that society is corrupt and that the believer is a victim of this corruption. Black pill, which is specific to incels. So I guess they're just completely throwing everybody else that's ever used that term under the bus. It refers to a belief that this corruption can only be changed through a massive societal restructuring, often including violence. Well, so they like completely redefined black pill, which black pill is actually the idea that society is on a slow downward spiral toward a societal collapse.
Yeah.
That is
so fuck it all.
Inevitable.
Uh-huh.
Right? That we're screwed. We can't do anything about this. Be prepared for it, because you're going to have to be writing out a situation of economic, social, and possibly even governmental collapse. That's black pill. So they don't even get it right.
And all of that. And I'm not coming to save you.
Yeah, and I'm not coming to save you. And that's and it's not something that started with the incel community at all. In fact, I would say that that's more of a MGTOW thing. And I don't think they're entirely wrong on that. I think if there is a chance of avoiding a societal collapse, it's slim, and it relies on stuff that is hard to accomplish. Like, you can't avoid societal collapse without closing the accountability gap. You can't close the accountability gap without people recognizing and counteracting gynocentrism, and in particular gynocentrism that is more dysfunctional than just the baseline of dysfunction. And unfortunately, our society kind of relies on that, and people are comfortable with it. Both sexes, many people are comfortable with it. So I don't know. You could probably call me almost black-pilled in a lot of ways, but I don't think that violence is necessary. Like, that's bullshit. They refer to MGTOW, the acronym for Men Going Their Own Way, which refers to an online community that has overlap with the incel community. So, men going their own way are men choosing to eschew relationships with women. Men choosing to say, nope, fuck it. You have made it clear that you're going to be dysfunctional. Made it clear that you're going to be a legal and social threat. Not going to get involved. That's voluntary.
Right.
But they have overlap with incels. Incels are involuntary involuntarily celibate.
Right.
So
I it's hard for me to believe that someone, presumably with a college degree, put these words on this paper and did not know what either of them actually meant.
Right. It's sad. Like I said, this whole thing kind of reads like a report written for a 101 level women's studies course. Honestly, I hate to say that. I hope that it was. I hope that the person who wrote this put more effort into it than a 19-year-old college student, but it just doesn't look like it.
And chances are it's a diversity hire anyway, either way you slice it.
Yeah. So the just be first thing for anybody that is not familiar with incels, they've portrayed it as necessitating that you target someone underage. It's not necessarily about someone being underage so much as being inexperienced, which some people are into their 20s, and more that's happening. Feminists have actually talked about this too, and they're upset about it. Fewer teenagers are starting sexual relationships. I think that's a good thing. I think it's better if teenagers don't have sex. I think it's better if they wait. They're better off if they wait. Their lives will be better if they don't get pregnant, bear children, and then have to become parents, or make the decision to opt for adoption, or, the girl have an abortion or anything like that. And, of course, they're safer from STDs, right, if they're not having sex until they are adults. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I guess it's upsetting to feminists, so.
And I mean, I'm really curious about what would be driving that, because I think, as we have all seen firsthand, single motherhood begets single motherhood.
No.
It's just a cycle. It really is. I don't. What is there something different happening that is making these young kids make different choices, make better choices?
Yeah, they're watching how dysfunctional their parents' lives were, I think. This is what I've heard from a lot of young men that have contacted me is, I don't even know who my dad is. I'm not going to be that in that situation, or I saw my mom yank my dad's chain around like a choke chain on a dog because she could. I'm not going to be subjected to that. And then there's there are guys out there that are very much aware of the dangers of like HPV, the dangers of some of the other STDs that are out there, and so they're being careful. They want to make money first before anything else happens to them. They want to, if they do want to start a family, they want to start a family with a home, not just like jump in with both feet and then hope that they can support the family. And a lot of young women are like, well, I want to get my career established first. I don't want to, I don't want to do like my mom did and start working and then have babies and then not finish, school or whatever. And so there are a lot of people that they're waiting. Some of them are just common sense reasons, honestly.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of guys that are seeing like girls are a little more melodramatic now than they were when we were growing up, which is really a sad thing to say because our generation was pretty melodramatic, like in terms of the girls were. The guys weren't, but our generation is the one that promoted the idea of a rape culture in the United States that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And
they did that, especially using the fucking TV shows like the Saved by the Bell.
Oh my gosh, Oh, do you remember Degrassi Junior High? Oh my gosh!
Yes.
And Degrassi High, I think, was sort of a follow-up to that. And
Mm-hmm.
then there were movies, James at 15, James at 16, stuff like that. That were these
Yes.
like uber
It was like
drama
the
soap
after school
opera-ish,
shows.
like yeah,
Yes.
like soap operas for teenagers.
Right.
And I would hear the kids talking about these at school, and I tried to watch them, and I just couldn't. It was they were so melodramatic. They were soap operas, and I don't like soap operas. So, but in any case, yeah, so we had that. But I mean, like, today, it's a totally different thing. So, this idea that you have to target someone underage, I'm not sure, because I've heard people using the term "just be first" in reference to adults that are actually still virgins, and it's hard for me to believe the FBI definition, given that they've got red pill wrong. So. Yeah. And yes, August Line, if you remember Degrassi Junior High, you're definitely an 80s kid.
Yes. I have never, ever heard of that just be first. Never in my lifetime have I heard of that. But it sounds sick. Okay.
Well, it's not really. It's women get jaded if they sleep around, right? And I did notice that when I was in college. I had friends that, like, just go to a party, get drunk, find some guy and fuck him. And, like, that was a thing. And eventually, they got to the point where they couldn't settle on anyone in terms of, like, who they're going to go out with regularly, who they're going to make a partner with. And, they're like, I was always sort of the background to this. I was never like the center of attention, because I always, if I saw where the spotlight was, I would find the edge of it and go just outside of that, because, I like to hang out with the people in the group, but I didn't necessarily want to be that center of attention. And the gal that would always be the center of attention would be similar to, Scarlett O'Hara at the picnic, where every guy is, oh, you want a dessert? You want to go for a walk? You want to sit and talk with me? Stuff like that. That left me and some of the other gals that were not comfortable with that much attention, free to just sort of hang out and chit chat with people. And you go on dates when you find somebody that you're interested in, and you don't go on dates when you don't, and there's no pressure, right? So some of these gals that were the more popular gals in the groups, this is a good way to put it. Richard Bier nailed it. She has the 1,000 cock stare, right? And what happens there is they stop seeing guys as individual human beings with their own ideas and beliefs and experiences and feelings and personalities. And so they're looking for Mr. Perfect, but Mr. Perfect doesn't exist because people aren't perfect, and they can't find him. And somebody who's still a virgin in college, or somebody who's still a virgin after college, right? That hasn't screwed around, that just treats people as people, that can see you and not another, this is insert generic man here, might actually recognize the value in someone that other people don't. So that's part of. I really don't think that Just Be First is about specifically targeting minors. I think it's about specifically looking for people who aren't jaded.
Loose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I get that.
and no, the Caliman MX. I doubt the FBI knows about pair bonding. They don't know about second breakfast either. Let's see. There was a "It's over" is a comment that describes the hopelessness of being an incel. Typical response to the comment is "It never began." So I think they've been hanging out maybe in incel forums, and they've seen these conversations, and they've put their own spin on what they've seen. I'm going to skip the reading stuff they talk about here because I don't think any of it is... I think they are mixing up different groups because they're talking about anti-Semitic groups and stuff like that too. Alt-right they define as a shorthand version of alternative right, a loosely associated movement of identitarians, white nationalists, and others who reject traditional conservative politics and advocate for the preservation and protection of the white race and Western civilization. But they call us alt-right, and we don't really care about race.
Right.
And then they say based. And our MVEs, something violent extremists, radical, militarized, violent extremists, I guess, use the term to refer to someone who has been converted to racist ideology.
Wait, what?
Or as a way of indicating ideological agreement. So, I guess Gamergate calling Christina Hoff Sommers based mom takes on a whole new definition now. Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, and by the way, poll, you're on their radar. Poll specifically refers to politically incorrect discussion boards on 4chan and 8chan used by some RMVEs to broadcast their violent intentions and RMVE ideology.
Like this RMV.
Yeah.
RMV.
So
What the fuck is that?
Go back up to the top here. Radical something. They gave us a... Yeah, I'll go back up to the top of the sheet because they have a thing. I
don't see RMVE in this stupid list that they in the like the PDF file.
Yeah, I know. I'm not looking for it. Or I am looking for it. I mean, the threat overview. They call involuntary celibate violent extremists IVEs. So, and I'm sure that R is radical. Or maybe racially motivated. Oh, so they also... This is something else. They have... Where is it? There was something I had seen from this about Alec Manassian where they called him Alex, and I don't know. Let me make sure, because I downloaded the PDF file on one of my...
Over here.
Yeah, because I noted it in our chat.
I think it's hilarious how these people just love to speak in acronyms.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like they're just creating code.
Yeah. Well,
it's code language.
Them noting Alec Manassian is interesting because Alec Manassian came out later and told not just his attorney but his therapist that everything he said about being an incel was made up for attention. And so he's still cited over and over again as being an incel and being, part of some sort of conspiracy to kill women and blah, blah, blah. When, in fact, you can't really trust anything he said. It's one of the reasons why I haven't, like, this latest manifesto that people are demanding come out from the Catholic school shooter. I think it was a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Like that, you can't necessarily trust that someone's manifesto is an accurate description of their ideology. Now, I wouldn't necessarily completely toss it out either, but I take a manifesto with a grain of salt because Manassian had one and it was fake. And this other killer's not around to say whether that's the case or not. It's possible that it's genuine, that this person really held those beliefs and so on, but I have my I have my skepticism now ever since the Manassian thing when it comes to basing what you say about a particular event on a manifesto. As we look at this, mass murderers, and in particular mass shooters, have had a variety of ideological causes that they've cited, when in fact, if you look at their individual cases and you look at their individual histories, a lot of it traces back to untreated mental health conditions and lack of support from their families and their development, and maybe coming from a violent environment, maybe being subject to a substitution of drugging for therapy that was needed and things like that. So I don't go in for the whole, well, let's get the manifesto and that'll tell us the whole cause for this. I think a lot of it is that we are failing to support young people in developing functional ability to confront adversity and assess their situation and act accordingly without doing harm to other people. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reason to not give a rat's ass about somebody's manifesto. That said, I think hiding it is not a good thing either, because that just makes it look like it's more important than it is. But yeah, it looks like they're
I think I see it. Racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism.
Yeah.
It's
Racially so it is racially motivated violent extremism. But yeah. So we look at this, but based, they literally defined based as one who has been converted to racist ideology.
Right?
You have to be kidding me. And then they also they have LARPing listed here.
I would love to see the examples that they use to draw these conclusions, because this just sounds ridiculous. How the hell did you get a racially or a racist ideology from being called base?
Yeah.
I want to know where's the source material, goddammit.
Then they hit LARPing. So when somebody pretends, for instance, to be an MRA, but then they say a bunch of things that are completely against our our standards, like they start spouting feminist ideology, or they just say a bunch of violent things. We this is an extremist or a nut job, a feminist nut job LARPing as an MRA. And they refer to it correctly as a term which stands for live-action role-playing, originally meant to describe a role-playing game in which the participants act out their roles as fictional characters. So they got that part right. Then they go on and I don't know. They attribute it to the racially motivated violent extremist groups. RMVEs and their associates use the term to online to deride individuals accused of not being extreme, and not being in possession of skills or other valued characteristics they claim to have.
They sound like machines.
Mm-hmm.
The RMVE 1000.
I know, but yeah, like, a lot of this doesn't have anything to do with us. There's a lot of terms here. They've like sort of mixed in terms from like the Jewish conspiracy groups and everything. The Great Replacement theory, they've got that in there. What's interesting is it's hard to call that debunked now because the World Economic Forum talked about it, and they basically laid out how they were going to do it, and so it just kind of like I'm not going to argue that that's not happening when the people that are being accused of it are like, oh yeah, we're totally doing that, and it's a good thing, and you should like it. But yeah, the Great Replacement theory is allegedly first popularized among European nationalists based on a 2005 book of the same title. The term refers to the belief in a conspiracy to replace the white race in Western culture through high non-white birth rates, mass immigration, and other measures. The title of the manifesto of the individual who attacked mosques in Churchland, New Zealand in March 2019. See also white genocide. So, like that, in terms of our movement, that really doesn't have any relation to us. But it's interesting that they noted it and consider it to be extremist rhetoric, because it's not exactly debunked, right? Mm-hmm. It's the opposite of debunked. So it's kind of, my thoughts on it. I'm as if we live in a world where we treat everybody equally, where we don't have historical guilt as an excuse for engaging in discrimination and oppression, where we don't have historical hate as an excuse, and we don't treat people differently based on their gender. If we close the accountability gap, it won't matter who racially is a minority or a majority, because we will have a more peaceful environment. We'll have a more understanding environment, and like men are men get along. So it's not the idea of a great replacement, but where we have a high birth rate of people who are not white, like that has no bearing on me. I don't care.
Right.
But it's an interesting thing to note that it's a goal of somebody. It's not necessarily.
I'm confused because I'm not sure how, if this is your process of replacing the race, wouldn't you be doing that to the other race at the same time? If everyone's converging, it's not just a great white replacement. You are then also destroying, or not destroying, but reducing the numbers of whatever other race that white person, that dirty white evil man, decides to procreate with.
Well, that's the thing. Like that, there are people who think that the idea is to eliminate white people through reproduction and all that. Like, right? And I don't really care. Like that. That has no. If people love each other and they reproduce together, that's a thing. It's not a big deal to me. Now, when it comes to the values of our society, that's a different thing. If they're trying to eliminate meritocracy, and they claim that meritocracy is a racial thing, then I have a problem with that, because smart people come in all races. Diligent people come in all races. Hard-working people come in all races. Ingenuity comes from people from all races, right?
And there's assholes of every stripe.
Right, there's assholes of every stripe too. And lazy people come in all races. So like this is kind of, for me, I'd be more worried about getting rid of Western society, Western civilization, which isn't really a racial thing.
Right.
Like that bothers me, because that takes it to a place of, we're going to get rid of the things that create the best medicine, the things that create ingenuity, brings about great engineering. How do you help people live better lives? How do you help people have an easier time? How do you help people get to and from places easier, and so on? That we don't want to see that eliminated. That's greatness, and those are characteristics that are, in my opinion, associated with masculinity. So if they're attacking masculinity, then I have a problem with that. But I mean, and I'm going to be careful how I say this because I know YouTube's not going to like it, but the historical experience of Native Americans that we talk about in terms of a genocide, a significant factor in that was intermarriage with white people, resulting in an elimination of purely Native American people, because their offspring, when they intermarried, were part white. And when white supremacists talk about the thinning of their blood and everything, I think they're talking about that kind of phenomenon happening to white people, to the degree that eventually there won't be anybody that has enough genetic heritage from their Western European, like, white nations to be considered primarily that in national descent or whatever. That's what I think that's what they seem to be worried about. And it's not an illegitimate description of what can happen. It's my question is whether or not it's a bad thing if we get to a situation in the future where most human beings' cultural heritage and most human beings' genetic heritage is widely spread, instead of from this person being from this one specific area and that person being from that one specific area. And my perspective on it's probably a little different than a lot of other people, because my heritage is like that. I have a broad spectrum between, my different branches in my family tree of heritage. Now, I'm mostly a Euromutt still, but it doesn't bother me that I'm not, like, when I say I'm Irish, I'm not purely Irish. I'm also, French and German and English and Welsh and Norse and Italian, and I could name, if I go through and try and name everything, it's going to take all night. I don't think that's a bad thing, right? And if I had other things in there, and I probably do, and I'm eventually going to find out, if I find out there are nationalities in there that I didn't know about, that'll just be more interesting things for me to find out about my family's history. That's just cool, right, in my opinion. But so it's not a big deal.
Right, and that's exactly where it should be left, right? It's a cool thing. It's interesting to learn about the history, but it's not the entirety of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know how much I understand the argument for the Great Replacement. However, I don't know how you parse that with the fact that the people who are in charge of us really seem to love to keep us fighting against black and white.
Yeah.
You know, they don't really want to, because a great white replacement would mean what? That they go away. Well, then who are you going to be mad at now?
Yeah, who are you gonna scapegoat?
Right?
If
Who are
there's
you
no
gonna
white people.
who are you
That-
going to direct all your anger
That'd be
towards?
that might be a good thing.
It might
but
be.
but on the other hand, if they start putting people in camps and getting rid of them, that would be a bad thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
obviously, like, people getting busy with people of different races, and the result being that most babies come out with, very non-white. That's not a problem in my opinion, as long as we are able to maintain the values of, moving forward with ingenuity and having a work ethic, and not being dependent on a government. I don't care, what
Right.
color people are. And I think men in general, men in particular, will just have fellowship.
Hmm.
You could throw men from different cultures together to work on a project, and their cultures can be dramatically different, and they will find a way to work together.
Hmm.
Right? Women just rip each other to shreds. Women tear each other down. They will turn other people against each other,
Right.
over the stupidest little cultural differences. Like,
Exactly.
men will work shoulder to shoulder with people that come from a culture that historically, they all try to kill each other.
Yeah.
If they need to put out a fire or build something.
Yeah.
So
But
I think men could solve the problem of racism if we just would stop
listening to
using,
women.
stop using the gynocentric, they're gonna hurt our women, they're gonna rape our women, they're gonna
Right.
taint our women, they're gonna pollute our women, like that kind of crap. If that would stop, there wouldn't be any concern about this, and the whole great replacement thing, like that, nobody would care.
Right.
But those values, I don't know. The bigger, scarier thing to me, like in terms of being replaced and all that, the bigger, scarier thing to me is the idea of an elite class trying to manipulate society into abolishing meritocracy and abolishing individuality, and that bothers me, because that's more of a trying to turn people into clones or automatons or slaves, serfs, And I think they're mistaken if they think that if they just go a little browner on the melatonin on the melanin scale, don't go to sleep, guys. On the melanin scale, that they'll get people who will be more likely to tolerate that. I think men of all races will ultimately figure out what's being done to them and won't put up with it.
Right.
Right? So there is that. But yeah, so the terminology that we're looking at here, we're not the target. There are several targets you can see, and but they're associating us with the targets, and they've got some of our terminology in there. But going on below that, then, it says, according to the FBI document, the word cell is short for incel. They're talking about, the involuntary celibate community. Docs we obtained...
Never heard it called that.
Yeah. Docs we obtained show how the FBI equates protected online speech to violence. The Oversight Project says in a tweet, according to @FBI, using the terms based or red-pilled are signs of racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. So their concern is this is going to flag conservative groups, because conservative groups adopted the men's rights based and red-pilled terminology, which based was sort of more a gamer term than anything. So this sort of stretches across MRAs, gamers, incels, MGTOW, everybody. Another tweet from the project says, using terms like looksmaxing, Chad and Stacy will get you on an FBI list for involuntary celibate violent extremism.
Because typing words online is violent and it's extreme, people.
Right.
Fuck's sake.
The FBI
I have no words because I pay taxes to pay these fuckers' salaries, and this is what they're doing.
Well, if you did have words, you might be in trouble anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're looking at the FBI deeming it extremist to say words on the internet.
What exactly is the end goal of this? So they're going to make it illegal to say these words, or are we trying to go to get fines? I know they
think
can't.
About what the FBI does, right? Like, and this isn't new. Like, what was it, 2017? They got into contact with some kid and manipulated him into agreeing to bomb something, and even got him. They drove him. They sent somebody to drive him to go get. He thought he was going to go get these bombs and everything. And as you go through his case, you find out every stage from the conceptualizing of the idea, I'm going to do this, to him ending up in the car with the agent on the way to, he thought, get bombs. Like, all of that was guided by the FBI agent. Not just the FBI agent being there watching him go through all this process and land on that. He was literally manipulated into it, and then it turns out he had mental health problems and I think he was autistic. He was barely functional. It just somebody that would not have been capable of coming up with the idea on his own. So, and then you had the same thing with the attempt at kidnapping the Michigan governor. The people involved in that was not their idea. It was an idea that was fed to them by an FBI agent, and then the FBI agent helped them plan this stuff and everything. They're now starting to find out that, as people thought, there was quite a bit of federal involvement in January 6th. Right? And so, like, all this stuff. That's what ends up happening. So, for our listeners who are incels, you're probably going to have feds in your forums now. For our listeners who are MGTOW, you're probably going to have, you got to watch out for new guys. Like, you might already have people there. With regard to the SPLC and defining the men's rights movement the way that it's been defined and everything, they started with MGTOW. The FBI is starting with incels, because that's the popular group to condemn now, because feminists have moved past MGTOW. So that's all. Like, you just kind of have to watch out. You know, if you've got somebody in your group that starts uncharacteristically for your group talking about, anything violent where they're not joking. Like, we joke about stuff like that all the time, but, like, nobody seriously says anything about wanting to do anything. It's, oh, this person is self-destructing, or this is happening, or that's happened, or, nothing along the lines of, let's do this, or we should do this, or this should happen, or anything along those lines. If you see something like that, you might be looking at a Fed.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty much, you kind of have to look at it that way. And it's also, obviously, when we have seen people in the past engage in violent rhetoric, we've policed that pretty harshly. But yeah, that's where we are now.
Yeah.
Xeranx gave us $5 and said, based as slang being opposite to cringe was started by rapper Little B. The FBI are racist. There you go.
Little B.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm so out of touch. I work with a bunch of 20 nothings, right? And so one of them pulled me to the side the other day. He goes, he's getting like everybody's talking about the situation. Hey, Lauren, hey, tell me what you think about this. Oh, you heard what happened with Blueface girlfriend, right? I'm like,
Who, what, where?
What is a Blueface? Apparently it's some rapper and his ratchet ass girlfriend did something. I don't know, but like, I don't know why he would have expected me to know. I don't listen to that shit. I don't know who this. It's I'm
a lot of times people assume if a piece of information permeates or dominates their sort of sphere of existence, where like they assume that it has gotten outside of their sphere of existence, and everybody else knows about it. I think that really is.
It is true. I do it myself, and I have to catch myself sometimes. I think because I know a piece of information that everybody else is aware of it. But that's not always the case. So
yeah. I will say Nova Fan also gave us $1 on Rumble. So it's a Rumble rant. Why are feminists concerned fewer teenagers are starting relationships? I thought they said women cannot consent under patriarchy and all priv is grape. Or all PIV is grape. Well, yeah, but, they still want women to have as much sex as possible. Like, that seems to be. And, of course, if teenagers aren't getting pregnant, then they don't have as much justification for a huge burgeoning government feeding on abortion industry, right?
Yes.
Like that's sucking at the teats of the federal budget. So so they gotta have that. Like Planned Parenthood can't survive if there aren't a bunch of pregnant teenagers out there going to have abortions. And so,
but Hannah, trans women can have kids too.
No. Trans men have babies. Men can get pregnant. But yeah, so there you go. That's our situation. They go on to say that the FBI didn't immediately respond to an inquiry Wednesday from the Daily Signal for this news report. They have their tweets in the article. And the article goes on to say the FBI documents show several words that the average person probably would associate with racist or white supremacist individuals or groups, such as alt-right, Zionist-occupied government, blood and soil, and I had to find out what that meant, and the Great Replacement Theory. However, many of the terms on the list of words the FBI is watching out for could be used with no content or context involving race or extremist views. And this is something that feminists have done to us historically as well. They take a bunch of innocent things and they group them together with a bunch of things that are not innocent in order to create guilt by association. Right? So you have this idea of fighting back against the Great Replacement by fighting back against the groups trying to get rid of white people, being associated with the idea of being treated fairly as a human being, and then by that association, it becomes racist to ask for fair treatment as a human being, regardless of your sex, regardless of your race, and so on, because, well, you're just like those people that are wanting to violently fight back against the Great Replacement Theory. And yeah, it's quite an insidious tactic there.
Yeah.
let's see. We already know. We'll skip the bit about. Oh yeah. The same term. Let's see. The red pill or being red pilled means someone is accepting racist, anti-Semitic, or fascist beliefs, according to the FBI. The same term has a different meaning for involuntarily celibate groups, according to the FBI. For members of this group, red pill means socially corrupt, or society is corrupt and they are victims of the corruption. A black pill is a term meaning that corrupt society can only be changed through massive social restructuring, often including violence. We talked about that. And then they get into the word Chad. They say the word Chad is race-specific. Race-specific term used to describe an idealized version of a male who is successful at gaining sexual and romantic attention from women. According to the FBI list of key terms, the female version of this is Stacy.
That's absolutely not race-specific, unless because I know a very black Chad. His name is Chad Ochocinco.
Yeah.
Played for the Cowboys. I don't like the Cowboys, but don't hate me. A person's name doesn't determine their racial makeup. So that's pretty fucking racist of you right there.
Yeah.
But no, it's just a man who is sexually successful, I guess. You know, he's got the looks, he's got whatever, he's doing whatever he can to pull as much poon, and it's working for him. That's a Chad, I guess. They exist everywhere.
Yeah. So basically, going over this, my thoughts on this, like this article isn't really long, and the document isn't very in depth, but just reading this, I'm looking at it as like this really does look to me like a report that would be written by a first-year gender studies major.
Mm-hmm.
It does not look to me like something that the police would come up with, and no. Sorry.
So somebody took their high school daughter's homework and doctored it up a little bit.
Yeah.
or use. Oh, I know someone. I'm not going to get too into specifics, but they're going through college right now and using Chat GPT to write papers. And it's working. It's working. That's the scariest fucking part about it.
Yeah, it is working. The sad thing is it's only going to get better at it too. Like, But in any case, we are at a point now. This is a government agency. Right, we're at a point now where a government agency is accepting work from its employees, from government employees, who they're on salary. Their job is to investigate crime, and the FBI, their job is often to investigate crime before it happens, because that's what they're doing now. Right, who are using dissenting terms, questioning politics, and so on, to denote, to imply, to presume, whatever, to decide who the criminals are going to be, and then acting on that, right? This is a roadmap for deciding that if you talk about particular issues, if you talk about the relationships between men and women and what's dysfunctional in the overall societal relationship between men and women, that you might be a threat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a roadmap for deciding that, maybe they might join your group and start agitating for actions that your group wouldn't necessarily have taken.
Right.
And it's a roadmap for outlawing dissent. So this is just like a thing I don't want to don't want to get too paranoid about it, but at the same time, this is a thing we should be keeping an eye on. It's a thing that we should be very concerned about, and it is a thing that we should be alert to. In that you want to watch out for sort of signs of manipulation in your group, right? And that includes not just on social media, but Discord, other forums that are more private than public social media.
But above all that, this is just another reason of why we need to defund the FBI.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, anybody in the FBI that is that's more oriented to protecting the public and instead of preying on the public could just go into their regular local police forces.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite sure a lot of local police forces would be quite happy to have former FBI agents on their team. So it's not like, they would get out of law enforcement necessarily.
Yeah.
But, and it might be, people might be better off that way. But there's a lot of things that really need to change. Like this is, yeah, and Xeranx gives us $5 and says, remember they wanted to create a Ministry of Truth. This is pre-crime.
Yes.
Shoot, what was that movie where they had seers that would predict crime?
Minority Report?
Yes. This is almost Minority Report.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of using a psychic, they're using your language, right? You say based, they say, you're going to be a terrorist. Like, that's not necessarily true.
Right.
You don't know that. And one really annoying thing about this, like honestly, one really super annoying thing about this is like a lot of this terminology is just mainstream now. Like when people use the term based, they're not even necessarily using it in a political way. Like I see that term being used by gamers. I see that term being used by political advocates. I see that term being used by people who are religious. I see that term being used by young people to describe adults that understand issues that are related to just being young, like school issues and sports issues and stuff like that. Stuff to do with their everyday activities as kids. So it seems kind of silly, right? And red-pilled, everybody knows that term now. That's not exactly a rarely used term either.
Right.
So they're looking at something that's going to it's going to impact on a broad spectrum in society.
Absolutely.
And I expect them to go after nerds, autistic people. Like I guess we're dangerous because we think differently, right? I expect them to go after men's rights activists. I expect them to go after MGTOW. I expect them to go after right-wingers. I expect them to go after left-wingers. Especially if you are more of a libertarian or ANCAP nature. Like, So this isn't... It isn't just limited to what it's saying in there. But let's see... I think I've gone through the entire article, so I'm going to see if we have any super chows. There we go. Sorry, I'm growling at y'all. My allergy medicine is like making my ears ring. Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 256, honey for the badgers, and thanks for the conversation. And that is our super chow. No, our only super chow for the night. So, there we go. And let's see. The Assassin of the Gray says they will not go after left-wingers Witness how Antifa gets away with their violence. They are useful as the brute squad. Well, they won't go after left-wingers who are protesting, right? But they might go after left-wingers who are alternatives to the norm. Like, you kind of see how they crushed Bernie Sanders' campaign.
Yeah, they did. And that was BLM that did it.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
They eat their own. They always eat their own.
And I'll bet there are FBI involved in pretty much every political group at this point. Antifa, BLM, all those guys, just not, going after them right now. But they will. They will. Eventually, the authoritarian state will crush all those groups, all the anti-government groups. So, this is just the way they do things. It takes time to get there, because they use some of those groups to break down society, and then when society comes back, like a lot of what the rioting, the condoning of the rioting was about, was getting you to ask for more police. The government supported the defund police movement because they could create dysfunction in the areas where people would do that, would defund the police. They could bus in the homeless that are drug addicts, because there are homeless that are not, but they could bus in homeless that are drug addicts, that are erratic in their behavior, and more likely to commit crimes and stuff, and more likely to engage in violence. And they could create a lack of authority in neighborhoods where there's gang violence, and not bring in any other solutions, and then turn around and say, well, what do you want us to do? And when you say, well, we need more police, all right, there you go, Crime Bill 2.0, here you go. And you'll have another, that's essentially what the Clintons did during the Clinton administration, was respond to a demand to bring back being tough on crime, and with bringing in tons of police, funding tons of police coming into different neighborhoods and everything. And that's what they're going to do now. That's why they've been, they're not enforcing criminal law in urban neighborhoods, but if you defend yourself, then they're going after you. So if you violate the tenets of the left, the anti-gun tenets of the left, even if it's legal for you to have that gun, even if it's legal for you to defend your property or to defend your home, yourself, your person, and even if you are under stand your ground laws, like they're going after people for defending themselves, like that's being enforced. But they won't enforce laws against mugging you. That's targeted, right? That's designed to get you to demand more policing.
Right.
And it's already started to happen. So...
yeah, well, they're going to be rolling out these robo dogs, these robo police dogs. Have you seen those?
Yes, I have seen those.
They are scary looking things, and God forbid anybody comes into contact with one and that thing starts to malfunction. But you know what's going to happen. There's going to be a casualty. It's like the first version of anything, like a video game system, right? Like, it's going to have its bugs. It's going to be screwed up, and you kind of got to wait until the kinks get worked out for it to be functioning in the manner in which one would expect it to, without causing excessive bodily harm.
Yeah. Like, in a perfect society, if they were going to come up with something like that, they would come up with it for the purpose of like, oh, there's a fire, we have to send somebody in to rescue people in the building, you know. Oh, well, you know, let's send in a robot so that because it can't die, right? So that it can go into places that maybe we can't send a person. But no, they got robots for policing. So, yeah. So that's basically it. I think we pretty much covered this. And I guess my ultimate message with this, the thing that I wanted to get across to everybody is be aware, be alert. We are on the radar. This is a little red laser pointed in our direction, and they're not trying to entice a cat to play. So just have that in mind, and you know, in your forums, in your discussions, in your interactions with people on the internet, if you run into somebody that starts advocating for things or suggesting things that seem out of character with the movement, just don't trust that individual, because you're probably dealing with somebody who is either coming into gawk because of this stuff or is actually involved with law enforcement and trying to manipulate you into committing a crime. So, with that, I think we're going to close it out. I think I've gone through all of the super chats. Well, we just got another one. I did go through all of the super chows and all of the Rumble rants. So our last super chat is from Ziranx, gave us $5 and said, "Have those servo monitors in Manhattan and LA. They're not at the level of using drones like on the show Dark Angel." Oh, I remember that show with Jessica Alba. But yeah, they do have those servo monitors in Manhattan and LA. Well, I mean, you guys do know that there are cameras everywhere. And they're working on... Oh, there's another super chat. Thomas Stein gave us a $1.99 solution. Don't talk to anyone. No, I wouldn't say that necessarily. But definitely be careful who you trust, and don't let somebody, like, if somebody starts getting in with, you know, violent rhetoric or genuinely hateful rhetoric, like, maybe consider that you're talking to somebody who is being disingenuous, and you know, even point blank say, you know, we don't do that. I don't know where you got that idea, but that's not us. Like, that's fine.
Don't let anybody else define you.
Right.
You know, you got to stick to your guns.
Well, and remember what I said.
Proverbial guns.
Right. Yeah. Remember what I said in my video on the topic of quote unquote male violence. You know, violence is labor. That is work. You are taking risks, you are exerting effort, you know, you are exerting emotional effort and everything when you engage in it. You're not obligated to use your violence for somebody else's purposes. And you're not obligated to switch from diplomatic methods like we use to violent methods for anything. You know, if somebody's not attacking you, if you're not in a situation where defending yourself is your only, violence is your only option for defending yourself, there's no reason why you have to engage in that labor and take that risk, right? Our movement sticks to contacting government officials, lobbying for changes in law and policy, trying to influence social attitudes toward a more even-handed approach to men, and to recognizing men's humanity. That's what we do. So if you see somebody advocating otherwise, they're demanding of you free labor for their purposes, and you don't owe them that. Like, it's not your job. You don't have to do that.
Yep.
So with that, I will thank Lauren for sticking out. This has been a weird sausage. This is an oddly shaped sausage tonight. Not real long, not real short. Just kind of like, this is a what the fuck sausage, because like being on a list like that, having a watch list for words, flag terms that we regularly use is just kind of weird, right?
Yeah, it's almost a PSA, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, watch what you're saying out there, guys, because this is what they're doing, and they are ready, willing, and able to come after any of us.
Yeah. Well, just like I said, we are peaceful. Maintain your peaceful attitude and document your peacefulness, and don't let anybody trick you into giving it up.
Right.
But yeah, thanks for sticking out the weird sausage with us, and all the listeners, and thanks for all the super chats and everything, and thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. And good night, all.
Good night, y'all.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.